There are countries built on rules, and there are countries built on warnings. Iceland is neither. In Iceland, doors are left unlocked. Cars are left running. Babies are left sleeping outside cafes. Not because Icelanders are careless, but because the country operates on an assumption that feels almost radical now, that most people won't do the wrong thing. And once you notice that, Iceland starts to feel different. Part 1, a country that doesn't expect the worst. The first thing you notice in Iceland isn't the landscapes. It isn't the black sand beaches or the glacial rivers or the hot springs that steam against the cold morning air. It's the absence of tension. No one is guarding anything. No one is watching you closely. No one seems particularly concerned with what anyone else is doing. Walk into a grocery store and the shopping carts are left outside. Step into a gas station and the door swings open with a casual push. Leave your backpack on a bench for a moment and it remains untouched. In many countries, public spaces feel defensive. There are cameras in every corner, signs shouting warnings, locks on doors even when they seem unnecessary. There's an almost constant hum of suspicion, a subtle message. Watch out, protect yourself, don't trust anyone. In Iceland, those layers barely exist. They're not absent because the people here are naive or because laws are unenforced. They're absent because suspicion isn't the default setting. It's not that crime doesn't exist here. It does. In the same small ways it exists everywhere. Someone might steal a bicycle. Someone might break a window, but the expectation that people will harm each other is remarkably low. And because suspicion is absent, everything slows down. You notice how people move, how they interact. There's a calmness to daily life, a quiet understanding that things will mostly work themselves out. There's space to breathe, space to walk slowly, space to simply exist without constantly checking over your shoulder. This is the first radical shift. Iceland doesn't prepare for the worst because it assumes the worst won't happen, and that assumption changes everything. It changes the pace of life, the texture of interactions, and the feeling of safety itself. Part 2, the baby story. Everyone talks about. Eventually, someone will tell you about the babies. Outside cafes, in prams, sleeping, often in temperatures that would make a visitor shiver. Snow might be falling, the wind might bite, and yet a small child rests, swaddled, utterly calm. To outsiders, this looks like negligence. How can anyone leave a baby outside in freezing conditions? But to Icelanders, it looks perfectly ordinary. It's called fresh air. It's believed to strengthen the child, calm them, help them sleep, and even boost the immune system. But the real shock isn't the cold, it's the trust that no one will interfere, that no one will judge, that the world won't suddenly turn hostile. This trust doesn't happen by accident. Parents don't hesitate because they know other adults will respect the child and their responsibility. Strangers pass by, nod politely, and carry on with their day. No one steals, no one kidnaps, no one mocks. They simply trust. That trust changes how parents behave. They can relax, they can socialize, they can leave their child unattended for short periods without panic. And it changes how strangers behave. There is a collective understanding that people are inherently responsible for their own and others' well-being. It's subtle but profound. Imagine a society where a stranger sees a child unattended and doesn't immediately call the authorities, doesn't panic, doesn't assume danger. Imagine a society where adults believe, without coercion, that the other adults around them will act correctly. It transforms the feeling of community. Trust becomes the invisible infrastructure. The air feels lighter. You start to notice it in the simplest gestures. A nod, a smile, a car yielding to another without signaling, a door held open without expectation of thanks. This is Iceland, and it is as radical as it is ordinary. Part 3, social rules you don't notice. At first, Iceland has rules. They're just mostly unspoken. You don't interrupt, you don't exaggerate, you don't pretend. Conversation here is direct, but not rude. Quiet, but not cold. Humor is understated, irony is common, but it's rarely used to belittle. People speak with precision, words are chosen carefully, silence is comfortable. There's no pressure to entertain, no expectation to perform friendliness. A smile is genuine, a laugh is real. The absence of performative social behavior makes acts of kindness feel rarer and more real. If someone helps you, it's because they genuinely want to, not because politeness demands it. Need directions? Someone will give them patiently. Lose. Your wallet. People may stop to help, ask for a ride. Strangers may offer, and all of this happens without question, without suspicion, without expectation. Even in professional settings, the culture leans toward trust over micromanagement. Meetings are efficient because people respect each other's time and intelligence. People are honest because dishonesty is rare. The social fabric is tight not because rules are enforced, but because people internalize them. And when you see it in action, it's mesmerizing. The quiet choreography of a society that trusts itself. A society that doesn't need constant reminders to behave. The subtle agreements. The invisible contract. We can rely on each other. Part 4. Why this only works here. Iceland didn't develop trust by accident. For centuries, survival depended on cooperation. Isolation meant dependence. In the harsh landscapes of lava fields, glaciers, and fjords, failing to help a neighbor could be fatal. A missed warning about weather could destroy a farm. A lost boat could mean starvation. Community wasn't optional, it was essential. Trust wasn't idealism, it was infrastructure. The social norms of honesty, punctuality, and reliability were not abstract values. They were survival strategies. Generations learned that helping each other was the only way to endure, and that lesson was passed down, quietly, culturally, and meticulously. Even now, in a modern world, that mindset hasn't disappeared. It's embedded in architecture, in laws, in social behavior, in daily expectations. The country's very functioning assumes a baseline of trust, and that's why exporting Icelandic trust rarely works. You can implement policies and programs, but without the centuries-long social memory, it feels fragile. Suspicion creeps in, layers of defense are erected, and trust becomes conditional. Icelandic trust is organic. It is woven from history, geography, and shared hardship. This is why a visitor can leave a wallet on a park bench and expect it to remain untouched. It's not luck. It's a culture that has internalized the understanding that most people do the right thing. That principle underpins everything. Commerce, travel, parenting, even leisure. Closing. Most countries protect themselves from people, locks, cameras, policies, warnings. Everything assumes someone might act wrongly. Iceland assumes people will protect each other, and once you notice that difference, it's hard to unsee. Iceland doesn't feel safer. It feels trusted, and that changes everything. Walking down the streets, you notice the rhythm of everyday life, the quiet confidence of strangers, the calm presence of parents, the ease of transactions, the lack of suspicion. Every interaction reinforces the notion that humans, at their core, are reliable. You leave Iceland and suddenly the rest of the world feels heavier. Heavier with warnings, locks, cameras, and instructions. You realize how unusual it is to live in a place that assumes good intentions, that operates on trust rather than fear, and you start to carry a piece of that trust with you, a reminder that perhaps societies can function differently, that perhaps the default assumption about people could be different. Iceland is not just a place, it is a philosophy made tangible, a radical idea that works because it has been practiced for centuries. It teaches that trust, once established, transforms not only safety but the very texture of daily life, and that is why Iceland is unforgettable.